1948, Palestinians experienced what they call the Nakba, the catastrophe, when over 700,000 people were forced from their homes. Families were torn apart, entire villages were erased, and what was once Palestine became a land of exile and occupation. This wasn't just a past tragedy. It marked the beginning of a long, ongoing fight for justice, dignity, and identity. Amid this crisis, Ghassan Kanafani emerged not with a weapon but with a pen. At a time when the world viewed Palestinians as nameless refugees, Kanafani dared to reintroduce them to humanity as thinkers, fighters, dreamers, and survivors. He believed that words could carry more weight than bullets, that culture could become the first battlefield of liberation. His life and work showed the world that literature could become resistance and that exile could be transformed into a powerful form of leadership. This is the story of a man whose voice was so powerful it became a threat to empires. Ghassan Kanafani, the writer who turned words into weapons and made the world listen.
It does seem that the civil war, has been quite fruitless.
It's not a civil war. It's a people defending themselves against a fascist government, which you are defending. It's not a civil war.
Well, the conflict...
It's not a conflict. It's a liberation movement fighting for justice.
Ghassan Kanafani was born in Acre, Palestine in 1936 into a middle-class family that valued education and culture. But by age 12, he was forced into exile with his family during the Nakba. Imagine being a child and watching your own home, own land, and entire identity stripped away, yet having to rebuild everything from nothing. From Acre to Lebanon, then Syria, Kanafani's identity was shaped by loss, but also by an unshakable sense of purpose. In the refugee camps of Damascus, Kanafani became a teacher, but he didn't just teach children how to read or write, he taught them how to dream. He used storytelling to turn pain into hope, transforming classrooms into sanctuaries where dignity could grow despite displacement. As a journalist, Kanafani became a fearless truth-teller. His articles confronted injustice, exposed oppression, and challenged dominant narratives that painted Palestinians as passive victims. As a fiction writer, his books like Men in the Sun gave life to the silent agony of the displaced, asking the haunting question, "Why didn't you knock on the tank?" His stories were not just words, they were acts of resistance, giving a voice to the voiceless.
It's a liberation movement fighting for justice.
Well, whatever it might be best called.
It's not whatever, because this is where the problems start. This is a people who is discriminated, is fighting for his rights. This is a story.
Kanafani's leadership wasn't about holding a title, it was about holding a vision. He knew that true liberation wasn't only about fighting on the battlefield, it was about reclaiming the Palestinian story from the hands of those who distorted it. As the spokesperson for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, Kanafani became the intellectual face of a movement. But his leadership was different. He didn't speak with rhetoric meant to inflame. He spoke with clarity, strategy, and moral conviction. He framed the Palestinian struggle not as an isolated conflict, but as part of a global fight for justice and human dignity. Through books like Men in the Sun and Returning to Haifa, Kanafani redefined what it meant to be Palestinian. He urged his people to see themselves not as perpetual victims of history, but as active survivors capable of shaping their destiny. He understood that culture was the first battlefield, that before you can liberate land, you must liberate minds. His pen became a tool that shaped identity, preserved memory, and demanded justice from a world too willing to look away.
Why won't your organization engage in peace talks with the Israelis?
You don't mean exactly peace talks, you mean capitulation, surrendering.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
Choosing the pen over the gun wasn't weakness, it was Kanafani's greatest act of courage. In a world where violence often earns legitimacy, Kanafani understood that reclaiming humanity required more than armed struggle, it required storytelling. His literature wasn't mere fiction, it was strategy. In returning to Haifa, he explored the pain of returning to a stolen home, forcing Palestinians and Israelis alike to confront the human cost of occupation. In Main in the Sun, his characters suffocate not only in a literal tank but under the crushing weight of displacement and betrayal. Through his writing, Kanafani humanized the Palestinian struggle in a way no weapon ever could. This was his ethical leadership, redefining resistance not through victimhood but through dignity. He believed that even under occupation, the oppressed had the moral responsibility to claim their humanity, to refuse invisibility, and even knowing the risks, he refused to stay silent. Because for Kanafani, silence wasn't safety, silence was complicity, and to him, that was more dangerous than death.
Well, if there were no swords and no guns in the room, you could still talk.
No, I had never seen any talk between a colonialist case and a national liberation movement.
But despite this, why not talk?
Talk about what?
On the 8th of July, 1972, Ghassan Kanafani was assassinated by a car bomb planted by Mossad. His 7-year-old niece Lamis died with him. It was a brutal attempt to silence a man whose only weapons were words. But why would one of the world's most powerful intelligence agencies kill a writer? Because Kanafani's words were dismantling carefully crafted lies. They exposed injustice, reframed the Palestinian cause, and gave the oppressed a narrative of power. His death wasn't just a tragedy, it was proof of the threat his ideas posed to those who feared truth. But here's the paradox. By killing him, they made his voice immortal. His assassination didn't end his influence, it amplified it. As Kanafani once said, they can kill a man, but they cannot kill an idea. His life and death proved that ethical leadership doesn't die with the leader. It multiplies through those who carry the message forward.
Talk about the possibility of not fighting.
Not fighting for what?
Not fighting at all, no matter what for.
Yeah, and people usually fight for something and they stop fighting for something. So you can't tell me even why should we speak about what?
Well, stop fighting.
For what? Or talk about stop fighting, why?
Though Kanafani died young, his legacy lives on across borders. His books are read in classrooms from Gaza to New York. His words appear in protests from South Africa to Chile. His writing still inspires people who are standing up to injustice, unfair rule, and racism all around the world. Kanafani taught that reclaiming your story is the first act of resistance. That culture isn't just art, it's the heartbeat of liberation. His message that the oppressed must write, speak, and create remains a rallying cry for movements everywhere. Today, his words are quoted on protest signs, studied in universities, and shared across social media. Because Kanafani understood something timeless. If the oppressed do not tell their story, the oppressor wins by default. Through his work, Kanafani reminded the world that a pen can shape nations, movements, and minds, and that true liberation begins with reclaiming your narrative.
Talk to stop fighting, to stop the death and the misery, the destruction, the pain.
The misery and the destruction and the pain and the death of whom?
Of Palestinians, of Israelis, of Arabs.
Of the Palestinian people who are uprooted, thrown in the camps, living in starvation, killed for 20 years, and forbidden to use even the name Palestinians.
They're better that way than dead, though.
Maybe to you, but to us, it's not.
Kanafani's story taught us all something deeply personal. For some of us, it was the courage to speak out when silence feels safer. For others, it was the realization that resistance doesn't always mean picking up a weapon, a story, a classroom, or a book can be just as revolutionary. He showed us what ethical leadership truly means. staying true to your values even when the cost is your life. He reminded us that leadership is not about commanding others, but about helping them see themselves as powerful agents of change. And above all, he left behind a legacy that still teaches, still inspires, still leads. Ghassan Kanafani showed that real leadership comes not from fearlessness, but from standing up for something greater than yourself. His pen was his weapon, his words his battlefield. And even when the price was his life, he refused to compromise his values. Though they killed the man, they could never kill his idea. His voice still echoes in classrooms, protests, and hearts across the world. Because true ethical leadership doesn't die, it multiplies. And Ghassan Kanafani, the pen of Palestine, continues to write through all of us.
To us, to liberate our country, to have dignity, to have respect, to have our mere human rights is something as essential as life itself.